conversation cheaper. Because the upfront costs needs to come lower, so that you can find many people actually just having solar as an option.
Yeah, that's true. It's seen industry stakeholders come together like this. It's a good thing. So hopefully their collective voice is heard by the people that actually then end up making the decision. Since yes, Pio and I is expected to preside over this. Hopefully not another talk shop.
Indeed. Our conversation for this hour is looking at global multilateralism and Nairobi's place in that global multilateralism. Okay? Now, Kenya hosts one of the 4 UN offices globally. And the Nairobi office is actually being expanded. It's the only one, as they say, in the global south. This one in the global south is getting bigger. Several things have happened in that conversation. Okay, so Nairobi is getting bigger. Several people will be moving from the New York offices and the other offices to come and be based and operate from Nairobi. What does that mean? Is it because, one, it's becoming more expensive to be in Vienna, New York, and other places, so they want to come to Nairobi? So are they going to come and make Nairobi more expensive? Or is it because, two, the Global South has been pushing for more relevance in the UN space and pushing, for example, we want to have a permanent seat in the UN Security Council, or basically just break up the entire Security Council and build it up afresh, and so on and so forth. But to appease you, let's say this, even the UN office in the Global South, you see, it's bigger.
It's bigger and we've invested this much.
Yeah. Is it just a way of trying to appease the Global South by saying, make it bigger for you? Or does it actually mean that it's a central place and there's a lot that can happen?
Represents him. So that's why in UN we say offices away from headquarters. Basically, extension of the Secretary General's office. So we represent the Secretary General. We have representational mandates. Ambassadors present credentials to us. As they present to the president, they represent to you. And Nairobi was important because the only 2 global offices, because most of the global offices are in Geneva. But the 2, UNEP and UN Habitats, the only 2 global offices in Africa are in Gigiri. And over the years, we had grown. We are the only UN interagency compound, common premises in the entire UN family that is doing everything the UN is doing.
Okay.
We do climate change, urbanization, development, humanitarian, peace support, peace operation. So that's what makes Nairobi unique. But the most important, it started with the decision by Jomo Kenyatta because he gave us 100 acres. And Arab Moi gave us 40 acres. So today, we have the biggest UN compound in the world. So that's why you're seeing people moving to, because Geneva is 113 acres, the second biggest. We're 140. So we have the biggest space in the world that brings everybody together under one umbrella, common premises, which is the vision of the Secretary General, that it reduces the rent you pay outside. It reduces the money you spend on yourself, so you can spend more money on doing the program. So that's what makes Nairobi very unique, because of the vision of the leadership, the commitments. It's all the presidents that are in Kenya have committed to multilateralism. So that's why the Secretary General is saying if everybody is in Nairobi, it's easier to be able to communicate with the rest of the world. What we found that Nairobi is in the equator.
Okay.
Nairobi is the only duty station within a 12-hour period that can reach anywhere in the world. That's what makes us unique. So we provide services in 166 countries around the world from UNON here. It allows us to go as far as Fiji, as far as Indonesia, the Asian Pacific. So Kenya, maybe as an African woman, Kenya was destined to play that role. You understand? Because of where geographical location, you can reach everybody. So it's easier for people. And when you look at the statistics, 18 of the 20 poorest countries are in Africa. 8 of the countries that have been affected by climate change, 8 of the 10 are in Africa. 15 of the fastest growing economy are in Africa. So UN Habitats, which deals with urbanization, their biggest clients are in Africa.
Yeah.
So why you're based here? Climate change, UNEP, is in Africa. 8 of the 10 countries that are most affected by climate change are in Africa. So it is being closer to the people you serve. You understand? So somehow the political decision taken by the government, Jomo Kenyatta, has now come to reflect a strategic importance of Nairobi.
Yeah.
And people have decided, where is the best I can come? And I tease people, I say, our company is like a suitcase. You go to a hotel. When people move, we, UNON, provide security, provide internet facility. You don't have to have cleaners and everything. You just take your suitcase and move. So it's the most convenient for efficiency purposes. If you want to deliver, if the biggest people you serve are in Africa and you want to deliver at a cost that does not affect, we don't use air condition. We don't use heating. It actually affects. And in terms of the infrastructure, Kenya has a well-developed, construction industry. So, and I tell you, when I sit in front of the General Assembly, all of the projects I have delivered in Kenya, I've delivered them on time and below budget. Because why? The construction industry in Kenya is well developed, so they can deliver. So there's a whole lot of, I just mentioned some of the advantages that makes Kenya very unique. And that's what we're working on. That's why everybody's saying, what's so special about Kenya when we sit in front? And everybody's saying we have to look at. So you sort of, people notice you, they realize what you can afford. Last but not the least, when I got this job, I was appointed, they said to me, it is the golden gem in the UN. That's how they describe it to me. Nairobi is the golden gem within the UN.
Why the golden gem? I'm very curious about a number of things. Why we are described as a golden gem. And
for UN operation.
For UN operations, exactly what you've described.
Yes, for UN operation.
A number of things that, and thank you for setting the context as you have. It's so we're expanding. $340 million US is not a small investment.
It is the highest contribution the UN investment, the UN had ever invested in Africa, on the exception of peacekeeping.
340. Keep that figure in mind, because to our audience that is watching, you give us figures of 50%, the UN actually achieving 50% women, 59% of that is African women. Yes. So within the setup of the Nairobi office, do you have figures of how many Kenyans are actually then
it's
working
about 60%.
within that? About 60%.
Yes. Of Kenyans are employing the UN in Nairobi here.
Okay. And since we're expanding, what was the previous number of personnel working within the UN? Now, and with this investment, how much are we growing it to?
When the compound was given to us, so it was given to UNEP by Jomo Kenyatta. It started with 300 staff. Then Arab Moi gave 40 acres with the establishment of UN Habitats, which came with 30 staff. So over the period, it has grown. Today, we have 88 UN offices in the compound. From UNEP 1 in 1972, we have 88 offices in Gigiri. And we have 97 in Kenya, because they're still somewhere outside. So we've grown over the period. 2 years ago, I'm sure you had all this talk about this UNICEF, UNFP, UN Women Moving. They did their own individual assessments. Once the UN started facing financial liquidity, we used to call it liquidity, people pay late. So we don't say financial crisis, say liquidity, because people pay, but they pay late. They looked at the cost of living, but basically the housing, the estates. And so, hold on, I'm paying $5 million in New York. And what COVID has taught us, that you can walk away from places, you do virtual. We can go we have a compound, the biggest UN compound. Yes, they charge us, but when they charge you, you don't pay security, everything is put together, and it's still reasonable than Geneva and New York. You don't have heating, you don't have air condition, you don't need air condition. But most important, if my staff are there in Gigiri, they can link up with anybody around the world within the 12-hour period. So they did those assessments, and they realized it's better and easier for them to work from from Nairobi. So that's why they took the decision to come. And today, We have more UNICEF staff in Nairobi than anywhere in the world. This is not their headquarters, but we have headquarters staff, we have regional staff, regional people from Sudan to South Africa, those who make the decision what needs to be done.
Yeah.
We have, and also because of the neighborhood, so we have the Somalia office, where an evacuation center for 13 countries around the world. So when the crisis happened in Sudan, the first place they did to contact us is say, can we move to Nairobi? So lock, stock, and barrel, we moved them to Nairobi. We worked very close with the government. So slowly, by different crises in other countries, by the people maximizing, their expenditure, it ends up, every time you look at all the buttons you press, what comes in the middle as the best place is Kenya. So that's how over the period, and up to now we have a list of people who want to move.
Yes.
So we do assessments, we work with them, we manage the space. So that's why we are. So today, as I said, we have about almost 6,000 people working in the compound.
6,000.
Almost 6,000. And 88 offices that are in the compound.
Okay.
That's many.
That's a lot.
That's very many people who actually operate just from that 140 acres and all the facilities around there. Now, when among the things, of course, that you've said that they look at, this is a compound where we can be housed. It'll cost us less instead of going to lease.
Instead of New York. Real estate is getting more expensive in New York and Geneva.
Right.
So
as they move, what does it do to the ecosystem around Nairobi?
I think it's Geneva. 10 years ago, Geneva did a study. What is the benefits of the UN economically? It was 3.6 billion that the economy benefits 10 years ago. Vienna did it a year ago, it was 1.9 billion. We anticipate what we bring into the economy is about 2 billion. Not less than 2 billion. But that study has to be undertaken by the government. We're talking to them, encouraging them. And it creates employment. I think in the compound, we have Kenyans who work in the compound to get the compound to function, to maintain it. These are about 500 people. That doesn't come to the 60% I'm telling you. Okay. It's about 500 people who work on the compound on a daily basis.
What are they doing?
Yes. It is dealing with electrical wiring, maintaining the grass, the structure, everything that makes maintain. So you work you go in a building, you have to get people. You need plumbers, you need electricians, you need people who cut the grass, the maintenance. So there are about 500 people. Then we have, right now we're doing the construction. A phase of the construction is hiring 250 people. They are all Kenyans. So the creates jobs. That's the first target. It's not only within the compound, but when we have meetings like the UNON, the hotels, and all of these 6,000 people we call working in, they go for medical. Their children go to schools. We have arrangements. We sign arrangements with most of the big hospital, because when COVID was coming, we did an assessment how many people should access Kenya, because Kenya is a Medivac center. It's our main medical center. When we do the calculation, it's 250,000, all the neighborhood. And that's why we had arrangements with hospital we signed to be able to make sure we can evacuate people. So in terms of the ecosystem, it's very large. And the salary you pay a staff in Vienna is the same salary as a UN you pay staff in Nairobi. So it doesn't change. And right now, what I discovered, because I remember when UN moved in Kenya, there were houses. Now we have so much apartments. So it doesn't affect how people pay rents. It doesn't. I have been in Kenya for 6 years. My rent has never increased by a single cent. And it's same with everybody. So obviously, what it does more, it brings more resources into the country. It creates more opportunity for jobs. As DG alone, people I have DG to support is 6 people. I have a gardener, I have private driver, I don't go the official, I have 2 maids, I have security 3, but I have 2 who are standing by, and not to talk about the person who comes for electrical. So I think that's what for us is critical as an African. That is critical, that we are building this infrastructure which goes to benefit Kenya. And now, as I sit here, I won't call names. There are a couple of countries who have made requests to me that they want to build structure, something like that, in their countries, what support we can give them as far as West Africa. I wouldn't call a name. No, not about Southern Africa, that are actually, because the heads of states request to us, say, please, can we build?
We need something around here. Mariam, and I think we're going to be able to link up with her shortly. She's at the Digital Summit and she'll be telling us what's happening there. She would be able to ask you a question, hopefully. But one of the questions that she's been asking and said, if I'm not even able to ask, please ask Zainab this question. So you have more people coming to Nairobi, all right? These are people who are paid in foreign currency.
Yeah.
So they come in here with our currency, they are loaded. Is that going to increase the cost of living or push some people out of some areas? Now, the UN has these green zone places where people
Blue zone,
where people live and so on and so forth. Those will be around the areas of Gigiri, into Runda, in some parts of Kiambu Road, into Westlands and so on and so forth. So with more people, how many more people are we expecting?
Actually, within the last 1 year, we have received about 900 people. But we lost 300 jobs because of the liquid sulfur. So we have a net, we lost 600, we have a net of 300.
So about 600.
Yes.
So about 600.
Yes.
And then by the time we finish constructing and everyone moves?
We don't know. I mean, what I cannot guarantee is that more with the conference facility, which is what we're fighting.
Yeah.
The offices, people make their own decision. We are not going to tell you 10,000. It's not possible. I don't think certain governments will allow them to move. That's a fact. The Geneva, their parliament puts down $386 million to keep the UN in Geneva. The US will never allow UN to leave New York. That's a fact. You understand? So it's not a way of people waving, moving, closing. No. People will look at their expenditure. Offices will say, okay, I don't need the staff. The staff doesn't go to committee 2, doesn't present to committee 5.
Yeah.
They are not really, truly needed in New York. Yeah. So let me ship them like UNICEF has done. But to think that they're going to move, no country. I'm telling you, in New York, it's 3.5 billion. For 1 year. Who do you think is going to allow that to move? That's the reality. That's a fact. Yeah. What we are fighting for is the meeting places. Because the UN was created to get people to sit around to discuss. Yeah. Most of the problems that the world deals with actually affects Africa more. So the opportunity sitting around the table, organizing meetings as a multilateral or discussing the issue. The Security Council had a meeting here once, but the General Assembly has only had a meeting in Geneva, and when we had the last civil society meeting 2 years ago, for the first time in the global south, 70% of the people who attended were African because they don't need visas. Yeah. We found out the participation of young people and Africans, they came more here. So that's what we're fighting for, to be able to make sure it becomes a diplomatic hub where all the issues can be discussed. So it's more...
I hear you, madam. But we'll take a break. The question is, when you have over 1,000 people coming with some serious dollars, what is happening to the people who have been paying rent of, say, 80,000 shillings in Westlands, and the landlord looks at it and says, I have higher demand, it's 100K. What happens to them? Does that create another side of an ecosystem? Does that have a negative? Are there negatives that could be there with a movement of people, with the expansion of the UN office in Nairobi? Certainly there are positives. Are there some negatives? Let's discuss that shortly after this break. Zainab Hawa Bangura is a UN Under-Secretary General and the Director General of the United Nations Office at Nairobi. It's expanding. It's going to be a bigger one. And it's because, well, we have the land, we have the country, we are geographically well placed, we have everything going for us. Good, bad. Where do we strike the balance? We'll be back shortly with that conversation.
Public participation. Governments don't work in a vacuum. Article 10 of our Constitution requires your input on how public money is spent. Don't wait for projects to fail. Attend local budget hearings and town hall meetings. Your silence is a lost opportunity for development.
My love, what a journey we've had since then. We've raised some pretty strong kids together. Annie with her beautiful mind. Junior and his winning spirit. But I worry about you the most, my love. So I've put some things in place to take that weight off your shoulders. Remember, I'll always be by your side. With Britam Whole Life and Britam Trust Fund, take care of those who matter most when you're no longer there. Britam, with you every step of the way.
Healthy nation. Your health, your wealth.
You feel that? The crash zone.
Crash what?
The crash zone. It builds suspense, uncovers evidence, foreshadows danger. You feel it now?
Oh yeah.
I guess I'll go and try and find a ladder.
What's up, Fixing the Nation? My name is Jeremiah Moro, and today I am a fixer at IBC's meeting, which was held at KICD. And essentially, this meeting, we were talking about campaign financing. And the question is, where is the place of young people, on the women and persons with disability when we talk about campaign financing? How fair is the ground for all of us to contest today? So I was able, alongside other actors in the room today, to really put our input in advising the IBC that indeed, in as much as you're talking about campaign financing, we need to ensure that the financial cap for financing campaigns is able to be an equal ground, serving both young people, women, and any other contestant to vie for office.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah, for that video. And yes, the IEBC has been seeking people's opinion on the issue of campaign financing, all right? It's good that people like Jeremiah actually take their time and go and sit in those meetings and they contribute. How much are we doing that? How many of us are preparing ourselves or prepared to actually contribute to such? Please send us your WhatsApp Nation video, 0769 590 762. That's 0769 590 762. Kikombe says he sent several videos. Inaonekana zimepotea kwenye mtandao. Please, Kikombe, you can just send it to us directly. And again, send again today, and we'll be able to air them tomorrow. We're having a conversation with Zainab Hawa Bangura, who is the UN Under-Secretary General and the Director General of the United Nations Office at Nairobi, talking about this big expansion of the Nairobi offices and the positives of what it brings. Like she's saying, the conference facility. If this conference facility is done and the UN is able to keep hosting meetings, Nairobi as a MICE destination has been one of the things that they've been pushing. Yeah. Even expansion of KICC, or redoing KICC, correct, now doing Bomas, and now having another one at Gigiri. It has an impact. Hotels, I'm sure, will not complain. Neither will people who offer transport services, and so on and so forth. Yeah. People will have, opportunities and jobs. Question is, how about the locals and everybody else who now gets impacted and affected? Let me just sample a couple of comments here from what the fixers are saying online. Nambox, if the UN can't enforce peace in conflict zones or stabilize situations, why are we celebrating multi-billion-dollar office expansions in Nairobi? Priorities are totally upside down. You're building offices, you can't bring peace, and that's why you are formed, to bring peace to the world. Baba Three Girls tells us to remind you, Madam Undersecretary General, that we have very, very good drainage system in Nairobi. So,
We have what?
a very good drainage system in Nairobi. So as you're expanding your Nairobi offices, factor our very good drainage system. You can see what he's saying, that in tongue and cheek. Tom Kahigu, the perceived negative effect about rent is most unnecessary concern or question. The more UN, the merrier. We have millions of tourists visiting Paris without affecting rent. Let's be positive. Okay, let's be positive. And others that are coming in, the book says it feels like it's a high-paying job creation for bureaucratic insiders.
Again, it's what we had, just in the warm-up to this conversation, we'd kind of put it out there that a lot of times people have ambitions to work within the UN.
Yeah.
Then, you go start, either to find the opportunities becomes hard, or even the recruitment process in itself. And this is a sentiment from locals, hence the curiosity around the number of Kenyans that work within the UN and what ranks they work in. As you can hear, there's quite a bit that I would love you to respond to.
I have 4 directors. I have Director of Administrative Services. He was a British, he's retired, he's an Indian who is taking it. I have Director of Conference Services. He's Russian. I have the security, head of the security is from Jamaica. I have the Director for Information and Communication. He's a Kenyan. So of my 4 directors, 1 is a Kenyan. I don't think that's a bad. And a lot of the departments, they are the ones who are holding it. I said they're 88 office, so I can't sit and tell you which position they all. But I can tell you, as the DG who is sitting meetings and everything, we have them very senior. But what is important, I have to say, the UN is a system, you don't have promotions. They have vacancy, they put criteria, terms of reference, we'll call them TOR. You apply for the job. And when you apply for the job, you go in the UN. So most UN people, Kenyans who work here, have the opportunity of the whole UN system. So they go out.
Yeah.
And today, we have what we call in the UN geographical representation. Every country has a quota share of the number of your citizens that can work in the UN.
Okay.
Kenya has the largest quota share, 5 times over its quota share.
For UN office
Kenya,
in Nairobi?
around the world,
Across the world.
Kenyans are the highest number. Kenya is the country that has the highest number of UN staff in the world. 5 times its quota share. Why? It's because they go through, they go through Nairobi. As soon as they go into Nairobi, the system opens for them, their vacancy, they apply. And so that by itself has created, and how that benefits is that each one of us, they get contribution to pay tax, like staff contribution to support your country's pay. But that's a long, complicated. But as I'm saying, the system is created because, remember, we are 193 member countries. You understand? So if you apply, you have to put a system in place that would allow people to apply. You understand? And it's very complicated. That I can say honest. And most people, even where I sit my position, people say, oh, can I send my CV? So you give me, we don't do CV. We do PHP. We created an HR system. You need to understand it. You apply, you'll be given opportunity. And you take tests. We always make our people take tests, and tests in which your name is not there.
Yeah.
Blind tests. And you have people who come from, like DG, I can put a team together to mark the test blind. So it's the structure. People just think you can't go in and apply. It's not possible. Of course, we have political appointment, like my position is by the Secretary General.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't pay attention. But now, as I speak to you, we have a freeze because of the liquidity challenges we have. So one of the first things they said, let's stabilize. We have to pay salaries to those who are here. So we cannot recruit. Most of the job vacancies have been abolished because we have to give that. So if people say, I think you need to understand the system, you just don't need, you look at a job, you understand, you look at what the job is asking. When you apply for a job in the UN, we have an automated system that looks at specific words that you've been requested. You're coming to do this, you're coming to do that. You just write who I am.
Yeah.
So that automated system completely drops you down. Before it goes to people, they do this, the HR people look at the job, look at the person, and then they come to a shorter list, and then they do tests, you know, and out of that test, the people who come out of that test are the people who are going to be interviewed. So you go like 3-4 steps to fight before actually you meet somebody now who decides, I'm the manager, this is what I'm looking for. So that's why it's very, when I became DG, so many people in my country send their CV, I just ignore it because you know, I can't explain. Sometimes I take the time to explain to people, you have to look at the job you're applying. There are TOR, terms of reference. They require specific specific experience, specific qualification, and that's how they look at. So the system is so intransparent but very strict. You understand what I mean? Correct. So that's why. So, and also there has to be vacancies. Sometimes we apply, like for example, I am supposed to have a protocol officer. I advertise, people applied, we did the interview, and then they told me, you can't recruit. So they freeze it.
Okay.
So those are all the challenges we have because we have too many jobs. But I can tell you, if there is any vacancy, somebody applies and you meet the requirement, you get the job. That I can assure you.
Okay. It's, again, that has answered a number of questions that we had as far as the recruitment of it and also just the recruitment freeze that the UN is going through.
Yes.
I want to shift a little bit to what this does for issues that are affecting the continent, because we have so many issues as a continent to deal with. So if we have such a big investment being made in the country and the UN setting up in this hub, then we have the question of DRC, we have the question of of Sudan, we have the question of, Nigeria and the conflict they're witnessing, like just within the country. Can we expect to see any kind of resolutions to these conflicts that will be addressed from this hub? Or do we keep waiting every time we have the UN General Assembly in September is when these conversations come up?
No,
and then we come back, it's turned into
Security
talk
Council.
shop.
No, policy decisions are made in New York.
Okay.
We are operational.
Okay.
Example, the crisis in South Sudan. This is where WFP takes the resources, the money, and everything to support the crisis. When the Ebola happened in DRC and Uganda, this is where the money came from. This is where the medicine is. That's where operational. Okay. We're not policy. We don't make policy. Decisions on how to negotiate peace, it has to be done in New York. Okay. Then New York can decide, like they decided security, and the first time they had it, let's go to Nairobi, let's sit in Nairobi and discuss that, because the players who are involved in this crisis are nearer to Nairobi. But that decision has to be made in New York. We cannot. What we do is support. What we do is create the enabling environment. If people want to talk, they can come and talk here. But the decision that they should talk, it's not ours. And I want to say something. Somebody says the UN, our second Secretary General, Dag Amaskol, he said the UN does not promise to take you to heaven. It prevents you from going to hell. The UN is imperfect because the world is imperfect. The UN doesn't have its own army. The UN does not force peace. The UN creates an avenue, an opportunity for those who are disagreeing to come together and talk. That's what we create. So, for example, in Nairobi, if they want to host the people in Sudan who are conflicting, we can provide the avenue in an area where you journalists cannot be running after them. You understand? So they can talk. We create the enabling environment for people to sit around the table to talk. That is very critical. So when we talk about Nairobi, let's understand the UN headquarters is New York. The Security Council is created to do with peace and security. It has to be referred to them. The UN Secretary, headed by the Secretary General, actually implement the decision of the Security Council and the General Assembly. So when the Security Council sits and there is peace in Sudan, they said, how do you enforce the peace? They now turn to the Secretary General. You put the mechanism in place to make sure that this thing is maintained. And then that's so the people who refusing for peace to be are the member states. We are international civil servants. We follow the member states. So you see what the president of Kenya is always talking, the way the multilateral duty station is. It's member states. We respond to them. So all of the countries have to realize that they have a responsibility. Correct. The good thing for me, as I say, is that nobody is agreeing to leave the table. It doesn't matter how angry they get, it doesn't matter how frustrated they get, but they sit on the table. They still sit there. And the fact that they still sit there, we have to have, I work on peace building because my country had conflicts. I know how you meet the different parties, how you engage them, how you talk. I dealt with rebel leaders. My previous job in New York, I dealt with 19 countries around the world, from Colombia to Bosnia to DRC, and I spoke to those people. So that is what member states, that is what individual countries, and that is why when your president came, he started talking about, that's why they have IGAD, all of these organizations. So the UN is imperfect because the world is imperfect. What the UN is at this moment is a reflection of the member state themselves. They are the people. The UN is an intergovernmental organization. Correct.
And it's those heads of states and governments that will, shape the way the UN then takes the direction it takes. Correct. Some of those heads of state and government have actually been talking about, the UN, and some, without naming names, have questioned the impact that the UN is having. So we are putting so much money into this body, and what's it doing? Just hiring and hiring more people and keeping people in offices. Yeah. But then, where's the return on investment for some of them? I'm sure you've had, those kind of conversations being said by, even if not heads of state, but silently in boardrooms by others. That we have a huge bureaucratic system here that is costing us a lot of money, that is not really developing or delivering on world peace.
The UN was not only created to do peace. The UN has three: peace and security, human rights and humanitarian, and development. Yeah. You understand? How did we end up eradicating polio? How are children fed during war? How are we dealing with refugees? So the UN is much bigger than peace and security. It's three pillars: peace and security, human rights and humanitarian, and development, the SDGs. Even here in Kenya, WFP is supporting school feeding. Why is not people talking about that? In the worst difficult crisis, the UN still goes there to make sure refugees get support, assistance, while the discussion on the politics is being made, but the UN is on the ground. So the UN, I describe it like a big elephant. Depending where you touch, you describe the elephant that is. That's the talks, that's the tail, that's the air. So that's what the UN is, this big, huge apparatus that do different things in different countries. You understand? Yeah. When the drought was here in Kenya, who led the thing was the RC and the UN. Said they brought resources together and addressed. So that's what the UN is. It's many things, or it's different things to different people. The peace and security, that's what's happened. You said there's nothing like good news. The bad news is the one that comes out. But there's so much that the UN is doing. You're talking about UNEP. As I told you, climate change. They're talking to countries to ban plastic. They are so cross-border crises. They also deal with it. It's not only about peace and security. Things that one country cannot. The COVID, the Ebola. These are things that the UN supports. So it's not only peace and security. Peace and security, who starts wars? It's countries. Yep. It's leaders. So the UN supports them. It makes sense to them. It discusses with them. It engages with them. And it tells them, you have to talk. Yeah. We have the avenue for you to meet and talk, to discuss this thing. So I think that's what a lot of people confuse, because it is the peace and security that's on the end. But conflicts, we can only address conflicts when the countries that are fighting agree. They have a responsibility. I went through conflict in my country, and I tell you, even when the rebel leader came, a lot of people, I realized he's a Sierra Leonean. I have to engage him. I have to work with him. I went into the bush to talk to commanders, to understand we can't destroy our own country. So at the end of the thing, it's the responsibility of the countries, of the leaders themselves to understand, I can't push my country beyond this point. The UN can take you to the river. They cannot force you to drink. You have to decide to drink.
Yeah.
They can give you all the road, they can give you the support, they can give you the enabling environment, they can rationalize with you, they can give you capacity staff to understand the damage that this war is doing to your country. But at the end of the day, that decision has to be your decision.
True.
Are you seeing a change of understanding? Let me not say, support, but a change of understanding of the UN role by various states, and that translating to lower contributions or delayed disbursement of contributions?
No, we have what we call the regular budget. Is each member state, they do a statistics analysis, calculations, and they tell you pay 0.5, you pay 0.0. And no member state has refused to pay. I can tell you that. People delay, and you have to understand when the UN was created, after the Second World War, there are less than 50, about 50 members. People had to join. It was a fatal complaint. You join. You understand.
Yep.
And now some of them, there was the two African, Liberia and Ethiopia, they used to say we are the fund. The rest of us came after independence. Now people are saying, oh, I'm this big, you can't renegotiate the thing that's created the UN.
Yeah.
So obviously people have their resentments, they have their challenges, they feel they are wealthy, I have to have more voice. But those are managed.
Yeah.
That's why we sit around the table. But there's nothing that is going to change it. From, I think, 49 or 50 members to 193 members. You think 193 people sit around the table, they will agree on everything? No. Some are saying, I'm too big. My population is huge. Why am I not having a more say here?
Yeah.
These are the challenges. We take time to explain to people and they understand. Eventually, they go back, they sit, and they come back, but we explain to them. So obviously, that's what nobody has agreed to leave. Everybody knows it's relevant. Everybody wants their voice. That's one vote they want in the General Assembly. So they're not leaving the table.
Okay. So nobody is saying that they want to leave. Nobody is saying that what they've been told to pay as a quota is too high or too low.
No.
But not everybody is paying on time.
But let me read this. This is an article from what time of year? This is as of January this year. And so it was just a concern on the liquidity issues at the UN. And just to read in quote something, yes, the US is the UN's largest contributor, but President Donald Trump has said it was not fulfilling its great potential and has criticized it for failing to support US-led peace efforts. Now, the US did not pay its contribution to the UN's regular budget in 2025 and offered only 30% of its expected funding to peacekeeping operations. Now, in January, of course, it withdrew from dozens of international organizations, including 31 UN agencies, citing, taxpayer funding in these kind of operations is not something that it wants to push for. And in late December, the US pledged, again, just to what they're calling adapt or die. And it's them, again, just cutting on how much it is they're contributing. And I think it adds to your question. When you have your biggest contributor, either it being Beijing or the US, cutting funding on programs, what then does it mean?
There are three different types of UN. That's why we call it UN family. We have in the middle, we have what we call the UN Secretariats. That's where the Security Council is. That's where the General Assembly and make decisions. That one is where your contribution is mandated depending on the assessment. We call it assessed contribution.
Okay.
That's where you say the US is the areas. Then you have the agency funds and program. A lot of them, their contribution are voluntary.
Okay.
Countries contribute. If you take WFP, the biggest contributor for WFP, over 90%, is the US, because their contribution does not come from the assessed budgets. So the assessed budget is different and it does different things. Then you have the specialized agencies like the WTO, WHO. They generate their own revenue from within. The WHO is from the World Health Assembly. So they have their assembly where member states agree to pay. So what Trump has done is the voluntary agency funds and program, where the voluntary contribution, he's reduced his contribution. He said, I don't want to contribute. In the specialized agency, he's defunded some of them, say, I don't want. He's not defunded in ITU, International Telecommunication Union. He's not defunded in IOM. International Office of Migration. And where the assessed budget in the secretariat, he's not said I'm not paying. You read it. He said U.S. peace-led initiative. No. If we're having a peace initiative, it should be discussed in the Security Council, in the General Assembly. So the UN cannot be seen in supporting one country's peace-led initiative. It cannot. You understand?
Yes.
You have the 15 members of the Security Council. They instruct us as a UN where to go, which peace operation we should support. So if you come, what most countries did, and that's what, if you go back to the history of the UN, when the head of, what's his name? Colin Powell, with Iraq, he had to go to the UN, to the Security Council to get a vote. So it becomes a UN peace initiative. He gets the blessing of the UN. So the Secretary General will not, any country, if you accept that, anybody can come and say, this is what I'm doing, accept it. You understand? Correct. So I think that's what the problem comes in, that you can do your own on a bilateral level. If you ask for the UN support, the UN can decide whether they want to give you advice. But for the UN to intervene in any peace and security, it has to be decided by the Security Council.
Now, our colleague Mariam Bishar is at the digital conference, and she's joining us on the phone. Mariam, Zainab was saying, I really missed Mariam. I really had wanted to be here when she's here. But that's where you are, and you're joining us now on the phone. Please quickly tell us where you are and what you're doing, and then I know you have a question that you'd like to ask, or two, but just do one because of time, that you'd like to ask the Director General.
Morning, Fixers. So first of all, I'm also sad to have missed Zainab, but it's just, two places at the same time. Hopefully we'll continue having conversations, be able to thread on what the UN is doing, how many people are covering, the impact. And I know that's what you've been doing for the last hour. But I'm currently at the Nation Digital Summit. What's happening here is a gathering of some very amazing minds who are integrating tech and AI into their businesses, making sure they can leverage it properly, making sure they move with the curve. Move with the curve as opposed to being left behind. And we'll be having conversations with a few CEOs, a few thought leaders, people working in finance, people working in tech, people working in agriculture, everything in between, and seeing how they're using AI and how they're also adjusting, I would say. The leadership shift is as big as the AI shift. So how do you lead in a time of AI? What changes? How do you approach people? How do you put people first, or do you put the machines first? Those are some of the conversations we'll be having. And this is the 6th edition of the Digital Summit. This one is slightly different from the others, but the idea of being tech forward is sometimes overused. We're like, we're a tech forward company, we're digital first, but what does that look like practically? Those are some of the things we'll be interrogating here. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Zainab, I don't want to ask a question that has already been asked. However, my concern is about the economic impact of having this huge influx of UN employees coming into the country. Maybe it has already been asked. If it has, that's okay. But essentially, will we see EU inflation? Inflation, but courtesy of the UN happening to Nairobi, whether it's to property prices or restaurants or the cost of living or education or privatization of things, everything. Just that would be my concern/question to Zainab.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mariam. And let her respond to that.
First and foremost, I have to say it's not a huge. I think somehow, because the Secretary General, for him, Nairobi is very close to his heart. So he would have wanted more people to move to Nairobi, but it's not happening. So it's not huge. Like I said to you, the last 1 year, we've witnessed about 1,000 people who have moved. And of course, we lost 300 jobs, so we still have a net. But the interesting thing is, when staff are coming to Nairobi, we give them an assessment of what the cost of rent is. They just don't come. So we brief them, we tell them this is the rent, that this is an apartment is this, an apartment is that. And so they know what is expected of them to pay. You understand?
Right.
So nobody's going to overcharge them. It will not be accepted. You understand? Even though they make their decision. So that's one aspect that people have to understand. They come, we have what we call onboarding. We do remote discussion with them. We tell them about schools. We tell them about everything they need to know about Kenya. So somebody doesn't come here and he knows that a one-bedroom apartment, let's say for the sake of argument, is 1,000. Then he goes, so somebody said 3,000. He said, no. People take chances, but it doesn't happen. So one is not a huge people moving.
Okay.
It's gradually. Secondly, that they know exactly what the cost of rent is. They know where they should stay. And before they take the houses, we send people to inspect the houses to make sure it meets certain standards.
Right.
And we know where they should stay. So obviously, we've not witnessed a huge increase in rents at all. So for me, it's possible, but it's not a big problem. You understand? And when you go to a restaurant, how do you know this is a UN, this is not a UN? We don't get our salaries here. You understand? Most of us get our salary in New York. And at the end of month, for me, I have an account here with KCB. You know, I transfer my rent, I transfer my expenditure, and I spend according to what is possible.
Right.
You understand? Yes. I go to the supermarkets, nobody knows I'm a UN. After the time I go with jeans and go with my private driver and I do my shopping, I come out. So I think I see more the positive, maybe because of where I come from as Sierra Leone, as an African. I tend to look at the positive thing that will help the country than thinking about the one or two negative things that nothing. Like when I deal with staff, everybody has weaknesses. But I focus on their strength. And I use their strength to build them up. And along that way, I will help them to deal with their weaknesses. So that's the way I look at it as an African. It's a great opportunity for Kenya. I would have loved it to happen for my country, but it's not possible. But as an African sitting here, I feel greatly honored and proud that actually Kenya, this is what is happening in an African country. And the future is Africa. And Kenya is strategically placing itself that you will not have an option, you have to come to Kenya. The airports will be affected, you have more passengers coming. Kenya Airways will have more people on board. You know, so the whole sector, different sectors of the economy, transportation. You go to Gigiri today because there's a conference. When we built the road, we got the road, we spoke to the courier. They have a place where Uber park when you have conference. A line is long because they have passengers. So that's what I look out as an African woman sitting in this position.
Very well put, Zainab. Very well put. I mean, if today Jeff Bezos said that he'd like to move Amazon operations to Kenya and come and operate from here, we'd be celebrating.
Yes. Because no matter what happens, he will not bring 100 Americans. Because Kenya, when you talk about technology, Kenya is very advanced. So he's going to look about what are the qualities, what are the people, the level of education, the expertise that Kenya has. That's where he does this assessment. So he knows that I'm going to employ a lot of Kenya because it costs him more to bring the Americans here. So he will bring a certain percentage at the beginning to provide the leadership, but then he will appoint Kenya in the middle and at the bottom. So those in the middle will have opportunity. As the Kenyans gain the experience, they will be wiped out. So by the time you know what is happening, there will be Kenya heading it. And that's how I look at it as an African sitting in that position.
Zainab Hawa Bangura is UN Under Secretary General and the Director General of the United Nations Office at Nairobi, one of the 4 globally, the only one in the global south, and now set to be, well, it's also the biggest in terms of land, also set to be one of the largest in the world, right? With this expansion, $340 million expansion program. She's been our guest. Keep it here for our next conversation, which is talking about one-term, two-term, and where the money goes. Is it going to the two-term people, to one-term people? It's a political conversation. It's 8 a.m. Good morning.